Good evening. Welcome to the December 19th meeting of the Glendale City Council, last meeting in 2023, being called to order at 6:07 p.m. May we have roll call, please?
Yes. Council members Asadrian,
Here.
Divine,
Here.
Kasakian,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
Mayor Brotman.
Here. And we will begin with the flag salute. So please stand, put your right hand over your heart, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please remain standing for the invocation.
Let us begin by acknowledging that we are standing on the indigenous lands of the Gabrielino Tangwa people. As we gather here today, let us pause in reflection, acknowledging the diverse tapestry of celebrations that mark this winter season. In this time of winter's embrace, as the year nears its close, we embrace the spirit of unity and inclusivity. With reverence for the traditions that have shaped us, from joyous festivities of Christmas and Hanukkah to the introspective reflections of Kwanzaa and the symbolic renewal of the winter solstice. May the lessons of compassion, generosity, and understanding from these celebrations guide us towards a shared path of empathy and kindness. Let us honor the warmth of community and the diversity that enriches our lives, transcending ideologies that divide us, and fostering a sense of togetherness and goodwill toward all. Thank you.
Thank you. You may be seated. Before we begin, I would like to mention that Councilmember Najarian is not feeling well and is at home, but will participate in the meeting. However, we need a motion to authorize his remote participation.
That would be acceptable. I would just note for the record, too, that he was admitted earlier into the meeting at the closed session. It's the same meeting, so you probably don't have to do the same motion
You
again.
don't have to?
Right. I think it's fine.
Okay.
He's already part of the meeting.
Okay, so we don't need the motion and the roll call, but we will just let the public know that he is participating from home so that none of us get sick and miss out on our holiday plans. So thank you to Councilmember Najarian for that consideration. Okay, Madam City Clerk, may we have your report?
Yes, the agenda for the December 19th, 2023 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on December 14, 2023 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And we have an agenda preview, okay.
Actually,
Do
the
we-
regular meetings for the City Council and Housing Authority on December 26, 2023 and January 2nd, 2024 have been canceled. The next regular council meeting will be on January 9th, 2024, and the next Housing Authority meeting will be on February 6th, 2024.
Thank you. And what's our next item then?
Next item is consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed.
Okay, do we have any of my colleagues want to pull an item? Councilmember Najarian? No. No, any members of the public?
Yes, there is a member of the public who wishes to speak on item 4C.
On item 4C, okay. Can I get a motion for the balance of the consent calendar?
I'll move the balance.
So that'll be 4A and D, 4A and B. Okay, roll call, please. Oh, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Asadrian,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Brotman.
Yes. Okay, and now would you read 4C into the record, please?
4C is Human Resources regarding insurance broker of record for city's benefits program award of contract. 1, motion authorizing city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Alliant Insurance Services, Inc., and appoint them as the insurance broker of record for all benefits programs. This agreement should span a 5-year term with the option to extend for 2 additional 1-year periods. to resolution of appropriation.
Okay, we have a card. Thank you. Okay. Okay, Alan Durham, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Brotman, members of the council. I've read the staff report for this item, but I just have a few questions. We all know that there was dissatisfaction with Glendale's prior insurance broker due to several years of large increases in medical insurance premiums. These increases led the council to approve 2 years of employee medical stipends to offset the premium increases. These employee stipends cost the city approximately $4 million. My question concerns the 5-year contract period for the new insurance broker. What are the termination provisions for this new broker under this 5-year contract if Glendale decides to terminate the contract early? Are there any significant financial penalties? Are there any required notice periods for early termination? I just want to make sure that if we ever ran into the same issues with another broker that we've experienced before, that the city has the flexibility without substantial penalty to exit the contract and find another broker. I was also a little confused about the $60,000 appropriation, whether that's going to the new broker or to the old broker. I think it may be going to the old broker for terminating the contract without the required notice period, but it was a little confusing in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we don't necessarily go through an answer, but maybe in this case, we
If
can.
it's council, Mr. Mayor, if it's council's request, our city attorney should be able to respond to the provision as to exiting the contract.
Okay, please.
I can answer that question. I know, having from the discussion previously, the contract has a 90-day termination provision that allows the city to terminate the contract for convenience by giving 90 days notice.
90 days notice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had actually asked about that during the staff briefing, and I was told that at any time we can also request to put out a new RFP and follow that
Okay.
exit plan.
And as far as the 60,000, I think that is for the existing contract. Is that correct?
I believe it is, but I have to defer to Chief Human Resources Officer Paul Adams.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. The $60,000 in appropriation is for the firm that we're withdrawing from. And so on average, they were getting $20,000 in commission. And for the 90-day window that we're asking to withdraw, we asked for appropriation to cover that expense in case we're charged.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay,
I'll move the item.
okay, we have a motion for 4C. Thank you.
We have another speaker
Oh,
on
is this for 4C also? Okay, sorry. Jaime, I can't read your last name, I'm sorry. What's that? Avalos. Avalos.
Mayor Brotman, members of the City Council, I'm Jaime Avalos, President of the GCEA, or the Glendale City Employees Association. I have the honor of representing City of Glendale employees from all over the organization, from the custodians to street construction crews, from the integrated waste workers to fire prevention inspectors, custody officers, parks employees, city engineers, as well as the customer service reps, to name a few. Over the past few years, our employees have felt a financial scare every time the new medical premiums are published and distributed. The big question I have been asked when the employees see these numbers is, how can a family be asked to pay such astronomical rates every month? Many employees rush to change their plans, realizing that they would be unable to afford the new rates. The medical rate stipends were a breath of fresh air for our city employees. So we would like to thank city staff for putting them together and for presenting them to this council. And we would also like to thank this council that voted to approve them. We all understood that the stipends were not going to last forever, and we needed a more permanent solution to these increasing medical rates. The labor associations worked together to explore options that might be viable, and we're glad the city took charge in this matter and found the new medical broker for your consideration. Our hope is that the council will unanimously vote to go ahead with this new broker, which will in turn bring a sense of relief to your employees. We are asking that this council approve this item and to give your employees a more lasting solution to these increasing medical rates. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Councilmember Devine, second. Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Asadrian,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Botman.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, next item.
Next are city council and staff comments.
Okay. Any comments from
I do.
my colleagues?
This being the last meeting, want to wish everyone safe and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you in 2024 after tonight.
Councilmember Devine?
Yes, well, there was a wonderful event at the Adams Mini Park, and I think we have some photos. It was a site of Santa Claus arrival. And does anyone recognize Santa Claus? I don't know, look closely. It was the largest, a crowd that they've ever had at a mini park event. It was absolutely amazing. The kids were there. I'm sure there were a couple hundred there to see Santa Claus. They were absolutely thrilled. So I want to congratulate and thank the Adams Hill Homeowners Association for putting on such a lovely event. There was caroling and drink, food and beverages and of course Santa. And as I had said last week, free photos with Santa, and I think he probably took about a lot of photos. And in conclusion, I just want to thank everyone, not thank everyone, but just wish everyone a happy holiday season and a very happy new year. Be safe, be happy, and please be kind to each other. Thank you.
And are you going to tell us who that was? Or is it
Does he
just,
want to admit to it? He was very good. It was Councilmember Kasakian.
okay.
I'm glad you said
Did
the
you
crowd was the
recognize?
largest and not that the Santa was the largest.
I would,
For the record, that was a padded belly that I was wearing underneath it.
He
And-
was terrific, and I don't know if you can see the one, my favorite photo is the one where the little boy just glommed onto his leg as soon as he got there, and was just so cute. They were just thrilled to see him, so thank you
it
to
was-
Councilmember Kasakian. Where is that picture?
There it is. I
There it
think it's
is, on the right side. He just hugged him, grabbed his leg, and it was just great, so it was fun. And thanks to the home of Adams Hill, great job.
No.
And Artie, too, good job.
Well, I just want to let any kids who are watching know that Santa asked me specifically to fill in for him. He was unable to make it. He didn't catch his flight. He's resting his reindeers for the big night, and it was an honor and a privilege to fill in for the big guy. Thank you.
And I just want to add that Councilmember Kasakian Santa was running a little bit late. And so the kids were like getting really anxious. And so I said to one of them, I said, now he's going to be here any minute. And he looked up at me and he goes, he's probably stuck in traffic. And I said, you're absolutely right. So it was wonderful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Satrian?
Well, I'll start off with thanking our council member for stepping in for Santa and making the kids of our city happy. Joining my colleagues and wishing everybody a very happy holiday season, regardless of what you celebrate. I also know that this particular time of the year is also very hard for many who have lost loved ones, who are struggling, and so I think especially with the need for mental health services, a reminder to reach out to folks you haven't talked to in a while, checking on friends, checking on family. We're stronger when we're more united, and we give a lot more love. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Najarian?
Yes, Merry Christmas to everyone. I must have been on Santa's naughty list, or at least the Adams Hill Homeowners Association naughty list, because I did not get an invitation to the Christmas party. So I'll have to be careful how I vote in the upcoming year. Thank you.
Oh, boy.
I think if you remember correctly, last week I announced that this was going to occur, that the event was going to be happening, and sorry you missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that invite didn't come from the people giving the party. I don't crash parties usually.
Okay, well, what's that?
I don't think we got an invite. I mean,
No,
saw
I
it
don't
on-
think I don't think
yeah.
any of us were formally invited. They just announced that this was going on, and
And my invite came with a caveat, Councilmember Najarian, so you're more than welcome to, carry the torch next year if you want to put on the suit.
okay. All right, just Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, be safe, have fun, get some rest, and hoping to be all fresh and ready for a new year. We've got lots of things that will be coming to us in 2024, so it's time for all of us to recharge the batteries. Okay, staff, comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Nothing? Okay, very good. Madam City Clerk, anything, any comments?
Well, we closed the nomination period for elections. And we have the list of all the qualified candidates on glendalevotes.org. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to my office, to the city clerk's office, and we will answer any of your questions regarding the candidates who filed. Thanks.
Okay, and there are 7 altogether, as I understand it, and the election date is March
5th.
5th.
Yes.
Okay. All right, what is next?
Next are community event announcements. We do not have any cards or callers
Okay.
at the moment. And following that are action items. And the first action item is finance regarding fiscal year 2022-2023 annual comprehensive financial report and fiscal year 2023-2024 first quarter financial status report. 1, motion to accept City of Glendale's annual comprehensive financial report on internal control over financial reporting and communication with those charged with governance for the first fiscal year ended June 30, 2023. 2, motion to note and file the financial status report for the year ended June 30, 2023. 3, motion to note and file the financial status report for the period ending September 30, 2023. Motion to increase the city authorized salary position count. 5, resolution providing for the establishment of classification titles and compensation for employees of the City of Glendale covered by the Glendale Management Association Memorandum of Understanding, including employee relations exempt classifications. 6, resolution providing for the establishment of classification titles and compensation for employees of the City of Glendale covered by the Glendale City Employees Association Memorandum of Understanding, including confidential and hourly classifications. 7, resolution providing for the establishment of classification titles and compensation for executive-level employees of the City of Glendale. 8, resolution providing for supplementary benefits and compensation of certain officers and executive employees of the City of Glendale to supplement the classification and compensation resolution of said city. 9, motion seeking direction on the proceeding of the budget balancing strategies. And 10, resolution of appropriation.
Thank you. Mr. Galani?
Yeah, Mayor Brahman, Member City Council. Before we start on this presentation, I just wanted to commend our budget team, finance staff that have put this report together. As you can see, there's a lot of data, a lot of work that goes into compiling all this information, and hoping that our presentation team of Jason Bradford, our Director of Finance and IT, as well as Audrey Sion, our Assistant Director of Finance, will make it as simple and comprehensible as possible. And there are 10 items that require action on your part. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian. Good evening, Mayor Brotman, members of the council. It is my pleasure to present our financial update this evening. Tonight, I will be presenting our financial statements for fiscal year 22-23, the general fund results for fiscal year 22-23, and then I will jump right into our general fund first quarter results for our current fiscal year 23-24, and that will also include several budget adjustments for your consideration, and I will also be covering an updated 5-year general fund forecast. As Mr. Galani indicated, we do have several positions we are proposing to adjust as part of our compensation alignment. And finally, I will conclude with some potential budget balancing strategies in which we're seeking further council direction on. So with that, as you know, per our charter, we are required to go through a fairly rigorous external audit performed by our independent CPA firm. And I'm pleased to report the city once again received an unmodified opinion. That is the highest rating we can receive from our external auditors. And that means our financial statements fairly present Glendale's financial condition and the results of its operations as of June 30, 2022. I'm sorry, check that, 2023. And we fully complied with all United States generally accepted accounting principles and all government accounting standards. I think the other important point that I want to make is we had no material weaknesses noted in our internal controls. In translation, that means our systems of checks and balances are sufficient that we would prevent and or detect any material misstatements should they occur in our financial statements. And lastly, we had no disagreements with our auditors, meaning they concurred with our applications and interpretations of all the applicable accounting standards. This is the city's consolidated financial picture, and this is the statement of activities, otherwise known as the city's income statement, and it's divided into two pieces, the government activities and our business activities. Government activities represent functions that are principally supported by taxes and grants. So that's our general fund, grant funds, capital improvement funds. For the period, revenues totaled $498 million. We had expenditures of $416, and our net position increased by $82 million. Business activities, that's exactly what it sounds like. These are enterprise funds, and they recover their costs through user fees and charges. So that is our electric, water, sewer, refuse funds, etc. The net position decreased by $22 million for the period and was generally attributable to higher increased costs for natural gas purchases and power purchase expenses for the utility. At the end of the year, the city's total net position is $1.8 billion.
Can I ask one question? Where do fees come in? Government activities, are they business activities, the fees, city fees?
So generally in the general fund, they are in the government activities, although each, the utility such as GWP and Public Works also charge fees for services. So it's both.
Both,
But
okay.
quite a bit is in the general fund under government activities.
But most of it's government activities. Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, I will go ahead and close out the general fund for fiscal year 22-23 for the year ended June 30, 2023. Revenues did come in higher than expected. A big piece of it was due to recognizing additional ARPA money sooner than anticipated, which I will cover in a minute. Our revenues total $284.2 million, which is about 2.9% higher than what we anticipated at budget adoption. Main categories, we did get a little more on property taxes, about 1.6 million. Sales tax came in a little higher at 800,000. We did get a big increase in utility users tax, about 2.4 million, and that was split between gas and electric. And then our occupancy, our hotel tax and other taxes came in higher as well. And our charges for services came in higher as well. The big ticket item is ARPA. And that came in higher than expected. As you recall, all of our ARPA funding had to be committed by December 2024. So the initial plan was to use $18 million to balance the budget in 22-23, and then the remaining $20.4 million would have been committed in 23-24. That said, late last spring, early June, there was some legislation going through Congress to claw back any uncommitted ARPA funding that was given to local municipalities. We became aware of it, and at an abundance of caution, we went ahead and committed it now in 22-23, just to be safe. As a result, the legislation did pass. Local municipality ARPA money was left untouched, but we figured we would be safe than sorry, and we committed it all in 22-23. In regards to expenditures in the general fund for 22-23, we were very close to our projections. we were 99.6 expended. The big savings, as you can see, was actually our Measure S programming the council approved. We wound up spending 15.8 million of these programs that will carry over into the next fiscal year. So this is a look at our ending reserve for 22-23. Our ending reserves is 123.2 million, or about 39.2% of next year's budget of $314.5 million. And again, the big difference in this projection was really committing that remaining ARPA money of 20.4 million in 22-23 rather than waiting for 23-24.
Any questions before we move on to the 23-24 quarter?
Okay, with the books closed for last fiscal year, I'll go ahead and jump into 23-24, and I'll start with our general fund revenues. Our revenues received are not linear. So as of our first quarter, we're only 8.7% received, although that is very, very normal at this time of year. For example, property taxes really don't, the first installment doesn't come in until now. December 10th is usually when everyone makes their first payment. Then we get the rest installment in April. Sales tax, there's a 2-month lag in sales tax. So for example, sales tax money received in July and August are actually accrued back to the prior fiscal year. So the first quarter is always low, and we'll have a better handle on our sales tax when I come back to the council in late February, March, and we'll have a better handle on our sales tax at that time. However, that said, based on our results from last year, my staff and I have taken a very hard look at our revenues, and we have gone ahead and revised our estimates upwards of $7.9 million in 3 categories. The biggest one is charges for services, and that is the new GEMT paramedic program that we took to the council in early June. Council approved our participation in that program, and as such, we have adjusted our revenue estimates accordingly. The other big adjustments, as I mentioned, is the utility users tax is higher than what we expected, and based on what our consultants are telling us and our trending, we've revised that upwards of 1.9 million. So those are the big adjustments to our revenues at that time. Okay, and on the expenditure side, this actually does track a little more linear. We are 23.4 expended. Since budget adoption, council has approved $11.2 million in adjustments through September 30th. The breakdown is as follows. There was additional funding for Fremont Park of $3.2 million. As I indicated, council approved our participation in the fire GEMT program. While we adjusted the revenues upward, there's also a local match to participate into that program of $2.4 million. So we had to recognize the appropriation in order to participate in that program. We did approve the medical stipend earlier this year at $1.6 million, and then we have the Measure S carryover programs of $3.9 million. With that, we have an updated 5-year forecast through the first quarter. We have our revised resources of $326.4 million versus a revised budget of $325.9 million. Gives us a small projected increase of about $500,000, and our reserve percentage now sits at 38% of our revised budget. Very briefly, I will go over the forecast. To forecast our revenues, we use a multi-pronged approach. We use consultants when appropriate. We look at a lot of data, a lot of historical trending. We look at economic conditions, of course, and then obviously we confer with departments when appropriate. Based on all that, our property tax revenues forecasted to have an average increase over this 5-year forecast of 3.5%. Sales tax is forecasted at 2.1%. Utility users tax at 6.8%, and our occupancy tax at 7.5%. Overall, total revenues is a 2.4 increase average for all the revenues added up. And as I mentioned to the council during budget adoption, we'll start using our Section 115 trust in fiscal year 25-26 to help manage our pension obligations. One item of note that I want to mention to the council is, and I did mention this at budget study sessions last spring, is the closure of the Shoal Canyon landfill. That will happen in December of 2024, so those revenues have been taken out of the forecast starting in 25-26.
I have a question. Do you have any idea how much of the trust will be used in 25, 26, 115?
The Section 115 trust?
Correct.
Yeah, Councilmember Devine, members of the council, we have factored in $5 million at this point of the trust. Of course, depending on our pension obligations and what happens in PERS in the next couple of years, that could change.
Okay.
So at this point, we've factored in $5 million. We're going to use it through 22, 23, 23, 24. And that point, we think it'll be fully exhausted by that point.
32, 33, 33, 34. It's
Oh, I was
about
gonna
7
say,
years.
if we have
It's about
over,
7 years
you know.
worth as of today, based on about $5 million a year.
Yeah, because how much is it worth today? Like
Oh.
30 million? 30 million.
Today's market value is $37 million.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, moving forward on the
Let's take a pause, Mr. Mayor, Mayor City Council, if you have any questions on the 5-year forecast.
I just have a question on when do we get to relook at, when is the budget actually coming back for us to be able to assess how we want to allocate funds for the rest of the year? Is that going to be in January, February?
No, it'll be later on, Councilmember Satrian, sometime in the spring of 2024, typically around April.
Okay.
Okay, on the expense side, as I mentioned in the last budget study session, I put in a placeholder for additional labor costs. As you all know, all of our labor agreements expire at June 30, 2024. So in preparation, we put in a placeholder of what that might look like just to prepare. Obviously, it's all subject to meet and confer negotiations. So at this point, it is a placeholder to recognize that that is a cost. And of course, we have factored in additional money for our internal service funds, our building maintenance fund, and our fleet fund. And then, of course, we have started putting money back into our CIP fund in the forecast, our capital improvement fund. And with all of that, the fund balance does start to decrease. It does go forecast to go below 25% in starting in 26-27 and below 20% in 27-28. So we are, for this report, we are requesting a total of $305,000 in additional appropriation, of which $230,000 is in the general fund. Management Services asking for $75,000 out of their PEG fund for various equipment for GTV6. That is not the general fund, that is out of the Cable Access Fund. Police Department is requesting 6 new positions. These are non-sworn positions. These are police service officer positions, PSOs, and for 6 positions for a 4-month cost of $230,000. In speaking with Chief Sid, we think the positions will be filled around March, so we've budgeted the 4 months of personnel cost for those positions.
Is that why it's just 3 or 4 months?
Correct. Yep. And lastly, this is a cleanup item. GWP is requesting an increase in the headcount for their clean energy officer position. This was created by the council, but we did not increase our city authorized count. So we are correcting that in this report tonight to increase our authorized headcount. And as you can see, our headcount increases from 1,613 to 1,620 positions.
I just want to interrupt for a second because I think this request from the police department for these police service officer positions is interesting, and it's of interest to the public, I think. I was wondering if Chief Sid could just tell us what these positions are and why they will help. or how they will help.
Evening, Mayor and council members. Police service officers, just to highlight again, are non-sworn positions, professional staff. And what we are using them to do and looking to grow the program is that they will do a lot of the, be it administrative duties, non-criminal activity out in the field. They can do anything from parking enforcement, traffic control, take what we would call COL reports or administrative reports, desk reports, respond to traffic collisions where there's no injuries, and they really do a lot of the documentation piece. So just trying to find ways, creative ways, to lighten the workload for our sworn staff. As you know, our sworn staff right now more than ever is at a premium. So trying to find creative ways, also ways that are fiscally responsible to offset the workload on our sworn police officers so we can keep those men and women doing the things that we want them doing, traffic enforcement, fighting crime, responding to calls for service. So trying to utilize these police service officers as a way to, again, to lighten that load. And then long term, we're hoping to develop this program, grow it some so that it can be something of a farm system so that in the future we can recruit hopefully police officers out of this classification.
Okay, and I just want to say, I thought it was important to mention that because I think this is responding to some of these calls that we've gotten from the public and you've heard from us. How do we do more? And we've got these constraints around, our ability to hire sworn officers. We also have financial constraints, so this is a response to that, and I appreciate all of you, staff, police department, kind of coming up with this new strategy.
Understood. Yeah, we're going to continue to try to find ways to be creative to address the growing workload, whether it's with civilian staff, technology, while still trying to make every effort, as you know, to recruit and hire the much-needed police officers we need.
Yeah. I think it's, thank you for that explanation. I think it's a great program. One thing, it mentions in the report that they will do evidence collection. Now, are they specially trained for that?
Yeah, these are still going to be folks that we're going to, for lack of better words, onboard. They will go through a training program, teaching them how to write basic reports, how to do certain evidence collection. Granted, these are not folks we're going to send out to collect DNA or things of that nature. But again, kind of low-level, run-of-the-mill type reports, maybe your shoplifting type report that's already been delayed a few hours, things of that nature. But yes, these are folks that we're going to receive training, again, on everything from collecting evidence, how to do traffic control, how to take basic reports, things of that nature.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this part of the report is the compensation alignment. Classifications are reviewed annually with adjustments proposed for positions on a needed basis. In this report, we're proposing 24 positions across 7 departments that are below market averages to adjust. It spans positions in community development, community service, parks, fire department, GWP, human resources, public works, and several executive positions. There are 2 new classifications being proposed, one in the city attorney's office for a claim support services coordinator and one in the human resources department for an HR compliance and operations manager. This will not increase the citywide headcount. They will take an existing vacancy and reallocate it to these new titles.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor City Council, I just wanted to add, as Mr. Bradford mentioned, these positions were below our comparable market. These are not just the only positions that are below the market. As you know, there are others that we'll be looking at and in the hopes of adjusting and bringing them up to the market so that we can be competitive and retain and attract good talent for our operations.
Okay.
I have a question for City Attorney Garcia. Is there someone in your department that will assume that claims support services coordinator?
Councilmember Devine, so we have 2 vacancies right now. One was with the claims analyst position that was actually approved last year, and then the other one, a recent retirement of our legal services supervisor. We are reallocating one of the positions to this new position. It will, there is somebody that works in our office that would be eligible to apply, but they'll be open obviously to anybody that's open, and we'll probably have another vacancy if that person ends up filling the position.
Okay, would this be an attorney
No,
position?
no,
Oh, it's not
no,
an
it's
attorney.
not. It's not an attorney position.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on this section?
Okay, so with that part of the presentation, I will now cover some potential budget balancing strategies. By way of background, before we get into the detailed discussion, I just want to provide a quick overview of taxes and fees, since that is what we'll be discussing this evening. They fall into two categories. Taxes fall into one of two categories, a general tax and a special tax. A general tax is exactly what it sounds like. It can be used for a variety of governmental services. Measure S is an example of one that was a general tax. General tax requires 4/5 council vote to place it on the ballot and requires a majority voter approval or one more than half. Special taxes are set aside for a specific purpose. It could be for maybe a parks or library district or public safety or maybe potential capital improvement. A special tax requires only a majority council vote, interestingly enough, but it does require 2/3 voter approval. And then, of course, lastly is the fee category. And in California, all fees are taxes unless they are to cover the reasonable costs of providing services, and which is exactly what Glendale's fees are based on. These fees are set by council and do not require voter approval. So with that, at budget adoption, council directed us to come back with some options and put pencil to paper, and we are seeking council direction on which to pursue further, if any.
And excuse me, before you go forward with this, can you just go back to the 5-year forecast? Because we want to make sure that people understand who are watching or who are here in the audience why we're talking about this, right? And here, you know, again, if anybody's looking at this, when we look out 5 years or 4.5 years or so, we're seeing, I guess, a few things hitting us all at the same time. Obviously, labor costs are going up and general costs are going up, inflationary pressures that everybody's facing. We also are no longer have a source of federal support that we've had for several years through the COVID relief funds or the ARPA money. So that's basically exhausted at the end of this year. And we have kind of, because of, I don't know what you would call it, I'm thinking of our pension liabilities, our annual pension costs are going to be going up, and that's a direct result of what do you call it, demographic? I want to say demographics, but I think there's another better word for that. But it's kind of, the stage we're in with our pension plans in the past and the people that are now coming into retirement age and people living longer and all those kinds of things. So we are facing kind of maybe it's not quite a cliff, but it's a steep downslope, right? And in 26, 27 is when we forecast that we're going to break through that floor of 25% that we have established as the lowest we want to go on our reserves. So we are looking at this because we realize that kind of our current revenue base is not sufficient to meet the needs over several years out, and so we're looking at additional sources of revenue. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say to explain that, but
Mayor Brotman, members of council, that was very well stated. I would only add, in regards to our pension, we do think it is going to spike in 2033, 34, and then PEPRA starts to take hold, and our obligations start to decrease through somewhere in 2040 and beyond.
right, so it starts to go up and it hits a peak around early 2030s, 2034?
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair estimate. Somewhere around 2033 is where we're targeting.
And then it starts to come down.
But then it starts to come down as our liability is paid off.
Okay.
I just have one question. Mr. Bradford, what is the average reserve for other cities? What's the floor for other cities?
So we are on the higher end for reserve percentages. We have surveyed that, and I do have a slide on what other cities' reserve percentages are. I want to say it ranges between 15% to 25%. So you can see where Glendale is at 25%, and with our minimum fund balance and our target balance of 35%. Pasadena's at 20, Burbank's at 25, Long Beach is at 16.7%, Santa Monica 15. Anaheim, interestingly enough, minimum fund balance is 7%, and their target fund balance is 10%. So it does range, but we have found that we are on the higher end with our reserve percentage policy.
And we're at 38% now?
Correct.
And at the end of your chart, I think it was 17% we're sitting at?
That is correct.
With negatives, right? So, okay. Cool.
There we are. 18%. Right.
All right.
Okay.
Looks good.
But the world doesn't stop.
I know.
At the end of 5 years.
What?
Yeah.
Maybe we can come up with more creative ideas.
Well, I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, first on the list is a business license tax. Glendale currently does not have one. Many other local cities do, such as the city of Los Angeles, Burbank, and Pasadena. They structure it a little differently. LA just does it based on gross receipts, gross income, if you will, for businesses. Burbank and Pasadena do it a little differently. They charge a flat fee based on the type of business, and then they have an additional component based on how many employees are employed at the business. So we just did some quick modeling. If we said, okay, if we adopted something similar to what the city of LA did, a $1 per $1,000 of gross income, we think somewhere between $7.3, $9.3 million generated annually into the general fund. Translation, if you had gross receipts of $1 million, the business tax would be $1,000, just to give you some perspective. So that is business license tax.
I have a question about that. I've been asked this for years. Why don't we have a business tax? Is there some sort of a fear that if we have one, that businesses will not come or they will leave? Or what's the thinking behind that?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Devine, there is no demonstrated data that shows that there's a fear. And in talking with our community development director as well as our economic development folks, there doesn't seem to be any deterrence. In other cities, obviously, they do still attract businesses to their cities despite having this business license tax for many, many years. So anecdotally, I don't believe there is any deterrent. Or conversely, businesses are not coming to Glendale because we don't have a business license tax.
But it's not an attractive tool? Because I've heard it's an attractive tool. All right.
That's not what we've heard or seen.
We don't have any data.
No. Businesses go to places where there's a demand.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, next on the list is the parcel tax. And a parcel tax is basically a flat fee assessed to the property owner on the property tax bill. And there's a couple of different ways to do it. You can charge a flat rate for every parcel. It doesn't matter if it's residential or commercial. Or you can tier it, and that's what Pasadena does. They tier it depending on the type of property it is. So we did, again, some quick math, put pencil to paper. Based on Glendale's parcel data, if we wanted to raise $3 million in parcel tax, it would be basically $70, a flat $70 per parcel if we went that route. Scenario 2, if we did it by parcel type, it tiers itself. So, for the residential multifamily, that's apartment buildings, it'd be $27. The single family, $54, and then everything else would be $325. It's very similar to what Pasadena does with their parcel tax. And the next one on the list is our Transient occupancy tax, otherwise known as our hotel tax. Our current rate is 12%. If we raised it 1%, it generates somewhere between 800, 900,000 a year. So if we did a 3%, we'd probably be looking at about $2.5 million. That would put us at the high end. I think the highest that we saw was 15%. There may be one agency at 15.5%. It escapes me who it is, but Anaheim and Malibu at 15%, Burbank is at 10%, and Pasadena is at 12.11%. I still haven't figured out what the 0.11 is for. So the next couple of slides, I'm actually going to talk about the property transfer tax, or you may have heard of it as the mansion tax. This is a little more complicated, so it's going to take a couple slides to kind of get through it. It is the tax on the sales price of the property when it's sold or transferred. In Glendale, the rate is currently $1.10 per $1,000 of the sale price, and it's currently split. We get 55 cents per $1,000 in Glendale, and then 55 cents per $1,000 goes to the county. So currently our split is Glendale gets about $800,000 a year on property transfer tax, and the county gets $800,000 a year. It's kind of an interesting thing as we were researching this. Per the taxation code in California, if we make any changes and put something on the ballot, we forfeit the split with the county. The county gets the whole $1.10. And then not only would we have to put our 55 cents back on the ballot, and we'd put something else on if we were going to increase it. So it surprised me, but that's just the way the revenue taxation code is written in California.
Clarification on that. That would happen, that would be triggered if we put it on the ballot, whether or not it passes.
I think if it passes, I believe it would have to pass in order to trigger that, yeah. So as I mentioned, this applies to commercial and residential parcels, not just mansions, for lack of a better way to say it, it's everything. So it's industrial, commercial, residential, there's no limit. What was also interesting, what we learned, it's not a progressive tax, and it's applied on the first dollar when a tier is reached. I thought it was going to be more marginal, something similar to your federal tax bracket. So I learned that as we were researching this, and I'll have some examples of what that means in the next couple of slides.
Question on that. Is that by statute, or could we, if we chose, make it progressive and say the first $2 million of a property sale is exempt, or you pay the standard 1.1 per $1,000, but any amount above $2 million, I'm just making that number up, starts to then accrue a higher rate?
So Mayor Brotman, members of council, that segues into my next bullet point. We can absolutely determine our own methodology. We could make it progressive. Cities have just written that in their ballot measures, and that's the way they've applied it. But there's nothing that precludes us from doing it however we would want. So if we wanted to tier it and make it progressive, or whatever the case may be, nothing precludes us from doing that.
Okay.
So this is just a numerical example of what it could possibly look like. So you see at the top of the slide, our current split is we get about 800,000. The county gets 800,000 on the $1.10 per $1,000. This is what the city of Santa Monica has recently passed with their parcel tax. They tier it. It starts at $3. Anything from $0 to $5 million, it's $3 per $1,000. Then it goes up to $6 for anything sold from $5 million to just below $8 million, and then anything $8 million over is all the way up to $56 per $1,000. So if we said, okay, if we had Santa Monica's rate structure for the parcels, and this is our data, we had 970 parcels sold in Glendale in fiscal year 22-23. This is what it would look like in Glendale. Roughly $12 million broken out by the various tiers. And then, of course, the county portion is ratcheted up, and they get the full $1.10 at $1.6 million.
But they don't get half. They only get...
No, the county gets the full. They get the full. Currently, they don't. In this, currently the county gets 800,000 because that's the 55 cents. If we put something on the ballot and changed it, that $1.10 now goes all to the county. All 100% goes to the county. So instead of collecting 800,000, the county now gets 1.6 million.
And we would get 12 million?
If we adopted Santa Monica's rate structure, that is correct.
We would get 12, they would get 1.6.
That is
Okay, that
correct.
sounds better to me than the other, them getting all of it.
But that's a huge step up. They're going from 0.6%, right?
Correct.
0.6% to 5.6%.
That's a big jump.
And if a sale is at 8 million, it triggers it for the entire amount of the sale.
And that is absolutely correct, and that's what surprised me. I thought it would only be incremental or marginal, but no. Once you cross into 8 million, that $56 is charged on the entire sales price. It is not marginal.
Which is weird, because if you're close to 8 million, you would just make it 7.999. Why would you wouldn't? It just would
And
create a strange distortion to do it that way.
Interestingly enough, the city of LA is facing that. There is, yeah.
Okay.
How many homes do we have in Glendale worth $8 million?
We
Do you have any statistics on that?
We have 10 currently. Well, that's sold. But these are this could be commercial or residential as well. Yeah.
Homes. Okay, homes.
Yeah. That's the thing that we learned. It's all properties, commercial, industrial.
But
and
again, that's up
residential.
to us. Could we apply it to particular property types,
I think so.
or would that be difficult?
Mayor Brotman, members of council, we can, but the 110 would change for everybody. So it resets the base. So that would be reset.
So this is just, again, LA's rate structure with our data, our sales data. They start at 450 when they go their first tier 0 to 5 million. And then it jumps to, their second tier jumps to 4450 per thousand, anything between 5 and 10 million. And then 10 million and over is 5950 per thousand. So using LA's data, that would generate 17 million. And of course, the county gets their $1.10, so that's still 1.6 million. So moving on, I think that closes the book on the taxes for the moment. We did look at a couple of other things on the fees. Reducing 90-minute free parking, we think generates maybe 150 to 300,000 if we took it in 30-minute increments. The next one is actually something we have done. We have completed our fee study, and we are going to take it to the council in February for your consideration. It's been a while since we've adjusted fees on a citywide basis, and as you know, our costs have gone up, and we need to reflect that in our cost of services that we charge. And we have over 1,000 fees, so there's quite a few that need an adjustment based on our cost structure. So we'll be taking that to the council in February, and we think it's anywhere between $2 to $3.5 million. And lastly, we do have some digital billboards and advertising based on some companies we've talked to, based on available sites. I think typically along the 134 corridor, 134 freeway, and depending on what we come up with, maybe $350,000 to $1 million in revenue for digital billboard advertising. So these are the items that we are still looking at. The first one is the increase of the transfer tax from the GWP Electric Fund. Currently, it is at 10%. And in our 5-year forecast, we have factored in the additional rate increases for the electric fund. So our transfer is going up in the general fund, but it's still held at 10%. If we could raise it 10%, but that excess percentage, as Mr. Garcia explained to me, it couldn't come from ratepayer revenue. It would have to come from some other revenue source in GWP. So Mr. Garcia and Mr. Young and I are still looking at it to see if that's feasible. So we're still researching the item. And then the parking tax is something we were also looking at. Burbank has a parking tax, the city of LA has a parking tax, but at this point, it's very difficult for us to determine how many private parking lots are in the city, and if we were directed to pursue this, we would need to hire a consultant likely to fully flesh this out.
Can you explain what a parking tax is?
So essentially, it's an additional fee. Anytime a car is basically parked in a private lot, and it's an additional fee tacked on to the whatever parking fee there is. So for example, City of Burbank has the airport. If you park long-term at the airport, there's a fee and there's a tax embedded in the fee that remits to the city of Burbank. So that's an
And that would be a fee or tax that we charge to the operator of the parking lot?
So they would collect it on our behalf.
I see.
So it'd be basically a pass-through, and they would bake it into their fee, and then they would remit the funds. And last but not least, the ground lease of city-owned properties. I believe Mr. Calvert is going to brief the council just very briefly on that.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Just wanted to touch on this really quick because there are a couple elements here that we would need some council direction on if you would like us to continue or move forward with the study of this. The map that you see here represents all of the city-owned parking lots. We have identified somewhere between potentially 9 and 13 sites that could be ground leased out for potential development. With certain rules, regulations, it would require housing, so there is a good chance for us to be able to make a dent in our housing element with that, or to bring forward affordable housing as well. There's also an opportunity, since we would be ground leasing and retaining ownership, that we could negotiate through development agreements for specific uses, things that may be of a priority to the community, the council, to incorporate into those projects. The two things that we would need from this, one would be the green light to go and get appraisals on these sites so that we can understand what the economic value is, as you saw on the slides. That was TBA at this point, or TBD. The other part would be the area that is along Verdugo at Glendale Community College currently is zoned special recreation, so it does not allow for development. We are in the process of updating our land use element. This would be an excellent time, if council would like us to look at these sites, to also do a study on any potential zone changes that would allow for development there. That could be done in a number of different ways, through an overlay district that we could put there, or through the actual general plan itself. But we would need that council direction to go ahead and incorporate that as part of our study. If so, the council provides that this evening, we would come back in January with a little more detail on how we could move forward with some changes there. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. I was just reading today where some of the cities are using parking lots, et cetera, to build tiny houses for the homeless, to get them off the streets. And would that be an option in any of these cases, or in this type of leasing of city property?
I don't believe that would probably generate revenue in the same manner as development, but if that is something that is a council priority, that is something we could consider. There are a number of parcels here that are available, and like I said, only 9 to 13 could actually hold development. We have other smaller ones that could be an opportunity there, actually a great thing for us to potentially investigate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is again just a recap of what I've covered on taxes and fees, and we are seeking council direction on which to pursue, if any. And I believe that does conclude my presentation for the evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. First, do we have any speakers?
We do not have any speakers.
No speakers. Okay, interesting. Very important subject. But I'm sure as we move down the path on any one or several of these, we will hear from the public. But are there any questions? Because what I would like to do is maybe get questions answered and then kind of go through some of these items and get the temperature on council for what do we want to look at further and what do we want to kind of set aside, because I think staff can't look at them all at once at least. So maybe we need to prioritize which ones we want to ask staff to move forward on. But let's maybe start with questions if we have any.
I just have comments.
What's that?
I just have comments.
Okay.
Councilmember Najarian, too.
Councilmember Najarian, do you have questions?
The only question I have is, seeing as I have a business, am I precluded
precluded from discussing business tax issues?
Probably need to take a deeper dive on that, Councilman Najarian, but generally speaking, the general exception, public general exception would likely apply, but we'd probably have to take a deeper dive on that.
So should I just stay out of that
If you have a
business
business,
tax?
You have businesses in town, yeah.
But for
That's my only
purposes
question.
of this discussion, are we okay?
That's a good question. You know, if you're going to just provide very high level, input right now, we're not making any decisions, we're not providing direction really, other than just ask staff to go back and look at it. Then we can come back and look at those issues more closely.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So no questions, you want it, or?
No, I have some comments and feedback.
Okay, well, we'll start down here, we'll move this way, and get comments, yeah, so.
So I'm generally not in favor of the GWP transfer. I think that was something that we relied in, even though I think that the court decisions have indicated that we can do that without a violation of any existing law, and that we're one of the agencies that was grandfathered into doing that. I think that our utility has enough issues on its own that we should not be taking from it to additionally to pay for our other needs. I mean, generally everything else, business tax, property transfer tax, I'm somewhat lukewarm on, but there may come a point where we will have no choice. My first preference would be for us to consider parcel taxes, with clear indications and communication to the public as to what we will use those funds for. I think when people know where their tax dollars are going, they're more prone to support a parcel tax, whether it's libraries, schools, public safety, road repairs. I think that we need to be very clear as to where our gaps are and where we're going to spend those dollars. And I think we can convince our public, which has always been supportive of our measures to maintain the quality of life here in Glendale, and something that we're struggling to maintain in the current conditions around us, to support. I think that the public would support that. So that's generally my feedback. Definitely, we do need to look at other sources of increasing revenue, and short of us finding some sort of reserve of some rare mineral underneath Glendale or something that could be a boon for us, I don't see any other ways of generating funds. And also, digital billboards and advertising would be something that I would like to explore in areas where it wouldn't have an adverse effect, along the downtown area, along freeways, and in those areas where it would be appropriate. I've seen it in other communities, and I think that it may be something that we may eventually have to consider. And ground leasing city parking lots to build additional housing, I think would also be something that I would support. I would like to see staff look into that.
Okay, before we let you go, TOT, 30-minute parking at our garages and parking tax.
I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. I don't know what
On
it is.
TOT.
On TOT, and even on the parking. If we're already going to be considering, and I'm assuming, I don't know where my colleagues, where you all will be on a business tax, but on parking, it's always been something that has, I think, drawn visitors to Glendale. We've tinkered with the idea of charging folks with parking, and I don't think we've ever found the actual formula that works for us. I think people are very accustomed to it, and increasing it for what it gets us, I don't know if it would be worth all of the trouble. Again, at one point we may have to consider all of these. It's not like I'm completely shutting the door, but in terms of my preference, I don't see that, and the TOT as being things that we ought to consider. I mean, when you look at the TOT in comparison to our neighboring cities, Burbank is lower than us. We're about on par with Pasadena. I love Glendale. I'm bullish on Glendale. I'm an unabashed Glendale promoter and supporter, but, Pasadena has a lot of hotels that support many events that happen at the Rose Bowl, the Rose Parade. Burbank has the airport. The question becomes, how much are we really getting in terms of our hotel people that are staying here? At one point, when there was in office working, I don't know what our office vacancy rate is. It kind of made sense to have the hotel industry supporting those individuals who are coming here for business stays and long-term stays. I don't know if that's quite there yet to squeeze more out of that. I don't know if it makes sense. In fact, I've heard some comments from some of the hotels around the city that they haven't quite bounced back to pre-COVID levels in terms of travelers and stays. So again, I'd like to have more information on it, but I wouldn't recommend that staff do its deepest dive and expend the most resources in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Satrian?
I actually have a question for Mr. Calvert. The ground lease of city-owned properties, I know it says to be determined, but is there some ballpark if per lot, per project?
Mayor and council members, no, not right now. We would need the appraisals to be able to tell us that. And I think being that we would enter into negotiations, that's not something we would want to discuss here in an open session.
If I'm talking about overall revenue for the city on all the lots and not specific lots.
I think we
still
can
gonna-
comfortably, Councilmember Sargent, say it'll be in the millions.
Right.
It'd be a
But
very
where
significant.
in the millions is I think where I'm trying to.
I would argue that it's probably going to be the most impactful thing on this list.
Okay.
And it's something that could be reoccurring in terms of its revenue generation every 15 to 20 years.
But it's also true, isn't it, that, it depends what we do with it, right? If we want to build affordable housing, then we're not going to have that revenue stream. If we want to lease it out to somebody who's building kind of more market rate or SB 1818 type, then we could get. So it's not just the value of the property, it's how we want to approach it. If we want to do tiny homes, that's a totally different story, right?
The tiny homes would be very different. I would say whether it's affordable or market rate, the revenue that the city will generate and collect from that will be roughly the same.
It'll be roughly the same.
Correct.
But we usually do a zero ground lease when we do affordable.
I think this is probably something that we would bring back in a more significant discussion. But and in terms of the tiny homes, I think that would depend on who we work with. I think we do have a number of sites that could not be developed that could be a great opportunity for that. So.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So, since I'm on that topic, I'll start with that one. I would totally support that. And it looks like Mr. Calvert was looking for direction on, I would be a yes on the study zone changes and looking at all the properties. I'm good with the digital billboards. Also the TOT tax. I'm open to exploring the parking tax and maybe reducing the 90 minutes to 60 minutes. That's not a priority. I don't think it's much, but I'm definitely, I think I said this during the budget session, but I'm not for the business tax, the parcel tax, the transfer tax, and now I guess the increase in GWP electric transfer. I think raising taxes is the easy way to do things, and I would love for us to see more creative ways in how we generate revenue. I think our community development director, and I see our IT in the back that has some projects in the pipeline. So I would like to start with more creative things. I would have to say, especially for the transfer tax, not all families are created equal and not all homeowners are created equal. And so sometimes you have one individual that owns one home that has been passed down that is being sold versus, 4 or 5 family members that pitched in everything to be able to purchase that. They still have a loan on it. They sell it. $10,000 is their maybe appliances for their new home that they're going to be moving into. So, same applies for me for like the parcel tax and all of that.
Okay. Councilmember Devine.
Thank you. Well, this is a conundrum because it's like we want to create revenue, and yet, you know, my first thought was, well, we should be doing the projects, the taxes, the strategies that bring in the most revenue, because that's what we need. We need a lot of revenue. I am not for, I'm against reducing the 90-minute free parking, because that gets us nothing. That gets us absolutely nothing. Digital billboards and advertising, that's hardly anything as well. The fee study, we're going to be doing that. That's a good thing. Now, as far as the business tax, I think we ought to give it a shot. You know, it's supposedly it doesn't deter any companies from coming to our city. I think that's a really great source of revenue. And that would, so I think I would be for that, the business tax. The occupancy tax increase, I'm not sure about that one. It would only bring in possibly 2.5, but, you know, our residents aren't paying that. It's people from other places that want to come here and stay here. And so I think that's fine. That's okay. Parcel tax, you know, I'm a property owner, but, you know, I would say yes to that one. And the property transfer tax, I would definitely say yes to. I think it's time that we do that. And it's a terrific source of revenue. And then again, you know, there will probably be other suggestions, and maybe none of these will come to fruition. And the fees, of course, we're going to be looking at. The ground lease appraisal on sites and the special, the recreation, is it recreational? And the overlay that you're interested in, absolutely, definitely to do that. I want to thank staff, finance staff, terrific job. I mean, this had to be hours of work that you put into this, and all the information that you've given us tonight is incredible. Have I covered everything, Mayor?
Parking tax. This is not the third 90-minute, this is for private parking.
I know, parking tax, yeah, why not?
And the GWP transfer.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mayor, I forgot the city-wide fee study.
Oh, well, that we're doing anyway.
Yeah, okay.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
Yeah. Okay, Councilmember Najarian.
Okay, I'll just go down the list there. Business tax, I am opposed to the business tax very strongly. The occupancy tax increase, I think I would consider going for. The parcel tax, absolutely not. Completely unfair to those that own parcels and taxing them for the benefit. What did we say? There's maybe 40% parcel owners in this city, to tax them and inure the benefit to another 60% of the residents, absolutely unfair. The property tax, no, I'm not for that.
When you
Parking
say
tax.
the property tax, sorry to interrupt, the transfer, okay.
Yes, excuse me, the property transfer tax. You know, I don't care what LA does or Santa Monica does, even though it's a source of income. I think it unfairly burdens a small portion of the community with a large tax burden that is, I mean, this isn't even a regressive tax. This is completely unfair, I think. The parking tax, I think, is something I would look at. The ground lease, I'm not sure. I think we have to, I know Mr. Calvert said we can't get into that too deeply, but I think we need to just look at that on a case-by-case basis. I'm concerned, though, that the small amount of revenue we might get from that would foreclose us from, you know, future use of those properties at some future date. Digital billboards, I'm okay with looking at. The GWP electric transfer, I think we need to look very closely at that, and let's look at it in the historical context. in that when the power plant was initially developed, one of the main intentions was for the revenues, and we've been through this at least 4 or 5 years ago, maybe not so much in the past 3 years, but it was developed with the intent to provide a revenue source for the city, and that was put before the voters twice. The residents of Glendale voted twice for a much higher transfer than we're already doing. I think we are hamstrung by creating this artificially low 19 million or 10% transfer that we've locked ourselves into. It truly is something that everyone pays into, and it's something that would benefit the entire city. I mean, everybody pays electric, everybody pays into the GWP fund in one way or another, and it's only fitting that go into the general fund to help pay for all our services. So I really think, those that say no, absolutely not, let's just look at a little historical perspective here and not try and paper over what the initial intent was for the GWP transfer. That's where I'm at.
Okay, and the 90-minute free parking?
Yeah, I think we need to work on that. It's not a lot of money. It may cause a lot of heartache, but in terms of as a part of a comprehensive parking study, I think it's something that we could consider.
Okay.
Would encourage people to take transit, to ride bikes, to walk. And that's certainly something that we're trying to do. That goes with the parking tax as well, to get them out of their cars. So if they had to pay for parking after the first 30 minutes or an hour, they'll consider combining trips. They'll consider walking, biking, beeline, etc.
Okay. So I don't know if I'm making a list and checking it twice.
Yeah, actually, Mayor, we have 3 people who are keeping tally.
Because I don't know, at the end, I think we're going to be all over the place, and we're going to have to figure out what we want to do. So I'll just go through my points. I think we should have a business license tax. I would like to see us do a gross receipts tax. All of our surrounding cities have it. I don't think it's going to be a hindrance, and if we could use that money to make the city a better city by having better roads, having better police, better fire, I think it will attract business. So I think we should look at that. A specific parcel tax, I'm not opposed to. I think we would want to identify a particular need, whether that is a public security need. If it turns out we need to really beef up public security because of what's happening with crime, or we need to do something particular, I would consider that. But I think our needs are more general. So to me, a parcel tax, I'll just say I'm lukewarm. TOT, I kind of think it's not worth it. This would have to go to the voters, and it would take, arguments for and against, and I just don't think it's worth it for the small amount of revenue that we could get out of it, and we're really not that far from other cities, so there's not really that much juice there. The mansion tax, I really like the idea. Now, I would never want to do it the way LA or Santa Monica do it. But I think if we had something that would kick in at $2 million, as I said, would exclude the first $2 million, so it doesn't create this crazy distortion. Do you know what I'm saying? Exclude the first $2 million. So if you sell a property, you sell a house or a business, and it's $3 million, you would be paying some higher amount on $1 million. Right, because the first 2 is excluded. It would be that third million. And I wouldn't go up to these numbers that LA has. It wouldn't be 4%, 5%. I think that's kind of insane. But maybe something that's a 1%, 1% as opposed to the 0.1 that is being charged now. We go to a 1% for the amounts over $2 million. I would like to model that and just see what that looks like. I think it's something that's very reasonable. Now, I don't think we take both the business tax and that tax to the voters. I think that's a little bit overwhelming, but I think we should take a look at both. I don't want to like exclude one. I think we should, personally think we should look at both and then make a decision on which we think makes the most sense. But I would not want to throw that off the table. The 90-minute free parking, I mean, you know, I agree with Councilmember Najarian. The only reason I would disagree is that I think we want to encourage people to use our off-street parking facilities. And I would kind of, instead of going to reducing that 90 to 60, I would kind of like us to go back and do what Councilmember Najarian said is a comprehensive parking study. I think it's been probably 3 years since we did that, or 4 years. I would like us to look at our parking generally. Are we charging the right amount to get our targeted? I think there's like, you always want to have 80% occupancy, and there's certain targets that you want to achieve. But I would like to look at that more broadly and make sure we're creating incentives so that people are parking off-street and that the on-street parking is kind of a more premium product. Digital billboards, I'm not opposed to something on the freeways. You know, I think that's what we heard. Could have some billboards on the freeways, but again, it's not one that's generating a lot of money, so I'm not really. Now, is that a fee? Is that something we could do without, is that a tax or a fee?
That's a fee.
That'd be a fee, Mayor Brahman.
Okay, so that would not be a ballot initiative?
No, not
I mean,
for
I'm
that.
not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that. The GWP transfer, I guess I'm going to be the outlier here. Oh, no. Councilmember Najarian also said it. I think we should look at the GWP transfer, and I was always opposed to it in the past. But the reason I think we should do it is because we have these needs. In particular, we want to try to provide subsidies for lower income ratepayers. And we want to provide other types of help for lower income residents. And so I kind of see it as a way to turn our tax structure into something that's a little more progressive. Right now, our tax structure is very regressive, largely based on sales tax and UUT, right? Those are our top two categories, I think. Maybe property tax.
And property tax. Yep.
We have a pretty regressive tax system. All cities do, right? And I think if we could pull a little bit more out of GWP in conjunction with some of these other things we're doing, but use that money very carefully and consciously to support things that are going to help parks in South Glendale, housing subsidies, you know, utility subsidies, things like that that are specifically targeted to our lower income communities, I think that makes sense to me philosophically. So I would like us to look at that. The parking tax for these private parking lots, I'm okay with that. I think that's probably a good idea to do it. And the ground lease, absolutely, I think we should look at our properties and see what the potential is there. So now that you've got all that written down, what do you see? Yes, Councilmember Asaf.
Mr. Calvert had asked specifically about direction, and I'm the only one that.
Okay.
Zoning.
I think I was assuming when people say we should look at the ground lease that there was a thumbs up, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was assuming that's a thumbs up for doing the appraisal and looking at that overlay.
All of it.
Right, it includes.
Yeah, okay, cool.
It's included,
So,
yes.
Is there any objection to that? Okay, so I think you have the direction on that we all support that. It's the other items now that we're going to have to see. And do we necessarily need, I mean, this is for staff to go and study something.
Right. So, Mr.
Right.
Mayor, yeah,
Tell us what you want.
Yeah, as you can see, there are 2, 5, 10 items that you all voted on individually. And if our tally's done, we could take the top 5 or 6 and explore more and do some research. And obviously, a couple of them we have to hire a consultant, outside consultant, to help us with.
Okay, and which are the top 5 or 6? Could you give us the?
I will, Mayor Brahman, members of the council, I will try. I'm taking a tally. Let's start with taxes. It looks like by my count, the park index had the most support. There was, for business tax, I'm going to say there was 2 yeses and a maybe. And there was a few maybes sprinkled out through this.
If maybe I can help out here, I'm not sure that
yeah, the next
maybes
one-
are going to be helpful
Right.
in this conversation. To kind of summarize what the tally looks like, everything with respect to citywide fee study and an increase in the electric transfer received a minimum of 3. The 2 that received 4 people in favor of were the digital billboards and ground lease for city-owned properties.
Wait, I'm sorry, say that again. The GWP transfer only got 2.
Correct.
Okay.
The citywide fee study is something that we're going to do anyway.
Right.
Ground lease of city-owned properties had 4 people in support of.
Right.
Digital billboards had 4 people in support of.
So those are 2 items.
Those are 2 items. Everything else had a combination of minimum of 3 people in support of. So
The parking tax had 4.
4,
The business tax had
3.
2.5. Because
I don't know how to
Councilmember
count that.
Kasakian was kind of lukewarm, so I don't know what lukewarm, but there were 2 of us that wanted to go and look at it, and I don't know, Councilmember Kasakian, do you want to go to one side or the other? Either you're warm or you're cold?
Again, if I may, for clarification, you are not making a decision whether we're going to put these on the ballot
course,
tonight
of
or not,
course.
right? So if you're lukewarm, but you'd like to see the item come back for further consideration, then that's what we can do.
Where did we land on the parcel tax in terms of support from the dais? Was I in the ultra minority on that,
there was
on parcel tax?
There was 3 people in support. It was Councilmember Kasakian, Devine, and Brotman.
Okay, all right. I mean, again, I would support that before a business tax because, let me just ask for clarification. Business taxes don't have to go to the voters? Or
They do.
They do?
They do.
And what is the threshold for approval for that versus a parcel tax?
The
Or is it
business
the
tax
same?
would be a general tax, so it'd be majority vote,
50 plus 1?
50 plus 1.
Okay,
And the
versus
and the
parcel
parcel
tax?
tax is a special tax dedicated to a specific purpose, and that requires a 2/3 vote.
Well, I mean, I would be generally supportive of it to be explored and to be put to the voters.
The business tax or the parcel tax?
Both. I mean, as long as the voters have the final say in it, I think that the people should be the ones that decide and speak on whether we should, have these methods of raising revenue. And again, I can understand at least one of my colleagues who had hesitation about parcel tax, saying that'll be unfair, but ultimately it's the voters who will decide, and like other taxes that we pay and we may not feel like we receive a direct benefit from, like property tax that goes to our schools. I think that ultimately there's a greater benefit from all of us, even those who can, chipping in to help those who can't.
Mayor Brotman, City Council, if it's your desire, I know the staff may hate me for saying this, but potentially we could bring all of these items back, not all at the same time.
I see staff
That was
already
loud.
grimacing.
And
Mari,
they laugh.
I heard that. Not all at once, so we can phase it and bring a few items back separately and get additional directions from you.
I think it would be worthwhile to prioritize based off of our conversation today. I, for one, I definitely would like to see the more creative ways before we even like tackle the taxes. Because if those are gonna help us get to where we need to, then we have to have a different conversation about taxes, right?
Yeah, I would say that we'll bring back the low-hanging fruits, the ones that are easier to implement, as opposed to the ones that we have to go hire consultants to do further studies.
So which ones are those? I just want to make sure what?
So fee studies coming back anyway.
Yeah.
Reducing 90-minute free parking is really not much of a, and I understand that there's a desire, to conduct a comprehensive parking study. That'll be part of that. That was going to take some time because we have to issue an RFP.
Yeah, is there support for that, a comprehensive parking study?
Yeah,
I am.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that, yeah.
Yes, yes. I
Okay.
would.
Okay.
Digital billboards should be easy to do. And ground lease, Mr. Calvert's already working on a report to come back in January. Electric transfer, we can handle that as soon as we can come up with an estimate. Parking tax is going to take a consultant to handle, so that's going to take a while. Business license tax we can bring back? No? That's going to take a...
That may take a little more of a deeper dive.
The rest, all these taxes, I believe, is going to be the second priority.
Yeah.
So I'm getting mixed up. So what do we have as our first priority right now?
I would say the digital billboards, ground lease, and electric transfer.
And the citywide fees are already being worked on?
That's already planned, yes.
Oh.
So the electric transfer, digital billboards,
Essentially, all the fees
ground lease,
versus taxes.
and parking study. Okay.
And the parking study is to look into the parking tax? Is that part of, Mr. Galanian? Is that, I'm sorry, the parking study, is that part of the parking tax?
No, that would be different. Well, let me think
Different.
about it.
This is in-
Maybe we can combine them. I know our parking manager is in the process of issuing our RFP to look at the parking management in the Montrose shopping area. So we'll consult with them and see if there is a way we can combine them. That's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And, okay, and so what else do we have? So how about some of the taxes that would have to go to the voters would be the business tax or the mansion tax?
Those will have to hire a consultant to do the analysis and provide a more detailed description.
Is there enough interest in moving that analysis forward, not necessarily deciding to go forward with it, but moving the analysis forward at this point?
Yes, if there is, like I said, it's council's direction, we can do that, but that's going to take longer than the others to bring forward to council. Yeah, absolutely.
But we can get the ball rolling on those? I mean, yeah, I think.
Just to confirm, Mr. Mayor, on the electric transfer, at least Mr. Taktalian's tally shows only 2 council members in support. So,
I will reconsider, because I liked the thought process that the mayor used for that decision.
Yeah, I think all the 5 or 6 items will keep staff busy for a couple of months, 2-3 months, and then the rest we'll have to hire consultants for.
Okay. But I would suggest, just bring them forward as they're ready. Like, if you
absolutely.
get something ready
Yeah.
on billboards, just bring it,
Yeah. We're not going to wait,
Do we have to vote on this today, or?
We
is it-
already voted.
Oh, okay, all right.
Well, it wasn't a vote, it was just providing direction. We'll take that and bring the items back.
Okay. But,
As long as there's
we
no
do have-
objection to how Mr. Galani summarized it, I think we're fine to move forward without a motion.
Okay. We have a speaker?
Yes,
Or a caller.
we have one caller coming in right now. It's going to take a second. Okay. All right. We have Herbert Milano on air.
Okay.
Herbert, you're on air. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mayor Brockman, members of the council, after watching this presentation, I feel incredibly saddened by the approach the city council is taking towards additional taxes. In addition,
Herbert, sorry to interrupt you, but you're breaking up. We're not able to hear you. Can you
is this any better?
start again?
Okay, I'll try again.
Oh, that's better, I think.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm actually calling from Argentina, and I just finished watching the transition of this country after having seen this country spend their way into misery. I believe that the city of Glendale needs to really reassess how it is spending its money. If you're going to have the public vote on any potential additional taxes, shouldn't the public have truly accurate and sober information as to the trends in expenditures the city has had? I don't believe the public knows. The financial reports have this statistical report at the end that shows the trends in the revenues that the city has had in the past 20 years, right? it has the information on the expenditures that it's had easily for the last decade. But I don't believe the public knows. And frankly, I think that many of you don't know. You know, when you began discussing the idea that you want to increase or the utility users tax, without discussing the fact that, the transfer tax, the transfer amount for the water and power, and not tell the public that you already have a utility users tax that puts money into the general fund, you would be misinforming the public if they don't know both that type of information. Because if you are combining the two, both of them go into the general fund. The problem that Glendale has had is basically an unrestrained and uncontrolled payroll and benefits and pensions. And you're not addressing it. Every year I see the same trend. Just tax more, right, and get more fees, which every way you can. And I think well before you start that process, the public should really know where we stand. I don't believe you have a report that truly presents to the general public the conditions of Glendale and the trends in Glendale for the past 10 years, let alone the past 20. And I think you ought to do that. I think you need an impartial entity that would give the public the true state of the city. I don't believe you have it. The state of California used to present an annual report on the state of the city, and Glendale was at the bottom 25%, one of the worst managed cities financially. Now that report has been pulled out of the state of California for some reason just recently in the last couple of months. So how does the public know how well you're managing the city's finances? I personally don't think you're doing a good job at all. But increasing revenues and increasing taxes without any opposition, I think is an awfully state for us to be in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we do need a motion. We need a roll call on, we have 10 items.
Correct.
Okay, so we do need a motion on all of these items excepting well, they were all read into the record. I'm not going to go through them.
On the one that has these strategies, if we're not for certain strategies, then how are we voting on that?
Well,
Because I wouldn't know, but I don't want my vote to reflect that I'm in support of these. So is it just asking for direction, or is it?
Well, item 9, Mayor and Council says seeking direction,
Yeah.
but,
And
you
we've
did provide
provided-
direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want, you can move 1 through 8 and 10, and then the staff has already received direction on the other items.
Good point.
Or you can make a motion on 9 for staff to proceed on the items that you provided direction on as part of your discussion.
Isn't that just implied?
Correct.
If it's
Okay.
implied, then
Yeah.
it's fine. If it's not implied in the motion, then I'd like to separate it out. Can you
Pull
please
the
look at
motion.
that?
Yeah, it's just motion seeking direction, so we're just approving we're just saying we've given direction to staff.
City attorney's checking, just.
I mean,
It's probably what you said. Staff is hereby directed to incorporate the city council's input on and feedback into further analysis of potential budget balancing strategies as described in the staff report. So it's kind of what you said.
Okay, so is there a motion for 8A1 through 10? Can we do them together?
I'll move 1 through 10.
8A1 through 10, okay, second?
I'll second.
Second, okay. Roll call, please.
Council members Azadarian,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Brotman.
Yes. Okay, next item, please.
Next item, item B, is Glendale Water and Power regarding introduction of the ordinance authorizing issuance of electric revenue bonds. 1, ordinance authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $230 million aggregate principal amount of the City of Glendale Electric Revenue Bonds 2024 series and $70 million aggregate principal amount of City of Glendale Electric Revenue Bonds 2024 refunding series payable out of the Electric Works Revenue Fund and approving certain other actions in connection therewith. And 2, resolution of appropriation.
Okay. Mr. Galanian?
Yes, Mayor Brown, member of the City Council. As you heard previously, there was a recommendation to issue bonds, electric bonds, revenue bonds in 3 tranches, and this would be the first tranche, and that Mr. Mellon, our Assistant General Manager of Water and Power, will walk you through.
Thank you, Mr. Galonian. Good evening, Mayor Brotman, members of the council. Yes, as was stated, Scott Mellon, Assistant General Manager, Power Management at Glendale Water and Power. I'm here to present on the ordinance authorizing issuance of electric revenue bonds. Get the controls to work. Let me just check it's on. Yeah. There it goes. Needed your special touch. So I'll start with a little background. As council may recall, there were several recently approved Glendale Water and Power projects that require funding. These 3 that we're going to talk about are likely a few of the most significant ones. Grayson Repower Project, that was approved by council in December 2022. Shoal Canyon Biogas Project, that was approved in January 2023. And the city-owned solar development program, that was approved in November 2023. Also approved in November 2023 were the electric rate adjustments. These adjustments were required to meet lending criteria in order to issue electric revenue bonds funding these and other capital projects. Since we have committed to these and other projects and the rate increases will be going into effect in January, our next steps are to issue the bonds in order to finance those projects. As discussed in the rate presentations, we plan to issue 3 tranches of the bonds, as this was the best way to mitigate rate increases. This ordinance will cover the first tranche, which is the first issue of $166 million in revenue bonds, which are expected to close around February 2024. This issuance will include refinancing of 2013 refund bonds that right now has $13.4 million outstanding, and another 2013 revenue bond that has $49.7 million outstanding. The bonds will be refinanced at lower interest rates with an estimated savings of $10.2 million over the remaining life of those bonds. Let's see. In the future, we'll be coming back to the council for approval on the next 2 ordinance. Second issuance and the second tranche of $166 million is expected to close around August 2024. And the third of the same, $166 million, again, will close around August 2025. So next steps, on January 9th, we'll be coming back to the council for the second reading of this bond ordinance, and we'll be seeking approval of the bond issuance and approval of the hiring of financial advisor and bond counsel associated with this. On January 11th, we'll be meeting with rating agencies. On February 15th, we have competitive sale of the bonds, and we're looking at closing February 29th. Now, one special note, there's a mistake in the ordinance that got passed us in the second whereas statement. There's a phrase, the 50 megawatts, 200 megawatt hour battery energy storage system. The description should read 75 megawatts, 300 megawatt hour battery energy storage system. So we wanted to make sure you were aware of that change. And at that, we're available for questions.
Any questions? Questions? No? Councilmember Najarian?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, no questions from me. I know these numbers seem huge, and people might wonder why we don't have questions, but these are all things that we've been discussing over months and years, and
yes.
Have agreed to move ahead with, and so we're just now figuring out how we're paying for them.
That's right.
Okay, I'll introduce the ordinance.
Okay.
With that change that Mr. Mellon just read.
With the
Thank you.
change.
Yes,
Okay,
thank
so
you.
this is just an introduction, I see.
Right.
Okay. And then we come back and we approve it. Okay, all right, thank you, Councilmember Devine.
You're welcome.
And I assume we didn't have any speakers on this one?
No, we don't.
Okay, then what's our next item?
Our next item is city attorney regarding appointment of drafters of arguments in favor and against ballot measure amending city charter provision pertaining to awarding of contracts. 1, motion appointing a drafter of arguments in favor of ballot measure. 2, motion taking alternative action.
Mr. Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, the council placed on the ballot for the March election a charter amendment that would amend the city charter pertaining to our procurement regulations. As part of that, our office writes an impartial analysis, but there is also the opportunity for folks who want to write an argument in favor and write an argument against to do so. As of now, nobody has requested to submit an argument against the measure. We did, request council members who wanted to sign on or write that argument to let us know, let the clerk's office know, and the mayor has made that request or indicated he'd be willing to sign. So the recommendation would be to authorize the mayor to sign the argument in favor of the ballot measure. Staff will work on it and submit it to the mayor, and then obviously he can make whatever changes he wants. So that is the recommendation that's before you.
But we can also decide this evening if it has the council as a whole as a signatory, correct?
Councilmember Kasakian, yes, I would just, the only caution I have, and we've done that in the past, the only caution I have, if you look at the strict wording of our ordinance, it suggests that it has to be anybody who made the request on or before December 11th. But again, we've done it in the past where other council members have signed on as long as the council is making that decision at an open council meeting, which is where we are today. So if the council wants to make a motion to have the entire council sign that ballot measure, or all of the council members, not the council as a body, but the council members to sign on, you can certainly make that motion.
I think it would just have a more significant impact if there was a unified, especially since this was something I think all of us agreed on putting forward to the ballot. So if there wasn't any objection from any of my colleagues, I would suggest that we have it signed on behalf of the council as a whole.
Well, would you make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, and that motion would include approving the item.
Right. That is the motion. So the motion would be to authorize every council member to sign the ballot argument in favor of the proposed measure.
Okay.
Well,
That will cover C1 and
question.
C1.
Oh, question, Councilmember Najarian, sorry.
Yeah, does that mean that we have the opportunity or we're obligated to sign it?
I think it means you have the opportunity. If you don't want to sign after reviewing it, then that's each individual's council member. Because again, you're not assigning the council to sign it. You're assigning each council member to sign the argument.
But if one of us does
Yeah.
not sign, it's, what message does that send, especially since I think there was a unanimous agreement to go ahead and do this?
Correct.
Is there a specific concern Councilmember Najarian has regarding it, or is it out of an abundance of caution? I'd like to know what his thought process is on it.
Well, I mean, if I was interested in putting my name on it, I would have put it in before December 11th. I think it's better if just the mayor does it. I think.
And could you just explain the reasoning?
I don't want to have my name on the ballot or in the argument.
And I would just add, it's, obviously it's an individual choice of each council member whether to sign on. This would just be authorizing each council member to sign if they're inclined to do so.
In that case, it might be just better to have the mayor.
I think so as well. I think it's fine to have the mayor, but I don't understand Councilmember Najarian's reasoning, but, he is free to decide how he wishes. Thank you.
Okay, so then you're going to amend your motion to,
I'll withdraw it,
okay,
and I'll make a motion for the mayor's signature to be on it.
okay,
And I'll second that.
okay. Okay, let's have a roll call for that then, assuming no public comments
No public comment.
and no other discussion, questions? Okay. Roll call then, please.
Council members Asadrian,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Botman.
Yes. Okay, next item, please.
Next item, hearings. A, Glendale Water and Power regarding approval of the form interconnection agreement and public hearing approving fees in connection with customer-owned non-net energy metering generation. 1, resolution approving a form interconnection agreement and authorizing the execution of such agreements by the city manager or his designee. 2, resolution amending the citywide fee schedule and adopting fees.
Okay, and I'll open the hearing at 8:02 PM.
Yes.
Mr. Galanian?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, member of the City Council, Dan Scorza, our Assistant General Manager of Water and Power, Electric side, is going to make the presentation. Our outside counsel, Mr. Eldridge, is also available to help out with legal questions.
Good afternoon, City Council members, City Manager. We're here just to present our form interconnection agreement for large non-NEM customers. And we've gotten several requests from our large customers to interconnect to the GWP system. And this will be the mechanism to allow them to do this. I just wanted to have a sort of a disclaimer. This does not affect any of the existing PV solar or energy storage devices that will be available to our customers. So this only looks at the large customers that didn't have a mechanism to be interconnected to our system. A lot of these customers would come to us. There were sort of one-off contracts that we would have to make for each one. So let's go through the slides, and the first one should, I think I need that special touch here. It moves. Oh, there it is. So these large customers include, as I said, non-NEM large customers, which are the hospitals, educational institution, industrial institutions, and commercial institutions such as studios and retailers. And what they're looking for is that they want to be able to build their system and then interconnect it to the GWP system. And in some cases, they will generate the power internally and use it all internally. They will also generate heat source that they can use inside to either for building heating and the electricity to be used by their load and critical loads if they have such items like chip manufacturing, emergency rooms. But they're also interconnected to our grid, and we become their backup. We're sort of their last resort. We would power them up when their system is down, and their system may be down if, for example, they're doing maintenance. So this will provide them a mechanism to be able to provide their load. We're also with this contract, or I'm sorry, with this agreement, we're getting ready for microgrids. That's something that's coming up. There was a Senate Bill 1339 that passed, and requires utilities to be ready to accept microgrids into their system, and this gives us that mechanism as well. And so here's a sample microgrid, what it looks like. It provides resiliency for the customers in that they could have storage, they can have their own generation, and they can operate outside of the grid. So we could see that switch there that they can flip on or off. And I'm just going to go over some other items, just a quick update. Again, as FYI, none of the existing processes change. These are some of the existing processes that we have for solar and storage customers. We are very much like our neighbors. In fact, in a lot of cases, we're better at providing the incentives and allowing them to connect to the system. And go on to the next slide. So the updated electrical service requirements, that goes through a process where GWP staff recommends. It's approved and reviewed by the general manager, and the city manager approves it. For the interconnection agreement that we brought and fees associated with it, here we have now a standardized process, which, as I mentioned before, these would be one-offs. Each entity that wanted to connect to us would have their own contracts. We would go through the same process, legal process, and then bring it to the city council for approval. Now what we're doing is standardizing this. The associated fee, I think some people had questions about that. They're a pass-through. They actually reflect what the hourly rates are for our employees and experts to review. And we don't charge them anything beyond that. In the interconnection, there's a study fee, design construction, review and requirements, equipment, the cost for interconnection. Again, those are just a pass-through. And then what rates apply to this interconnection agreement? Now, these are, again, large customers. So there's what we call a reservation charge. And that reservation charge is sort of what we call a standby charge. Remember, they will be generating power for their own system, but in case they can't use their system, we will back them up. So this charge covers us to be able to have the infrastructure in place to be able to provide the power that they require. And then if they use the energy, backup service charge, there's a different charge that we charge them for the electricity. So if the system goes down, then we would provide the power at a certain rate. And these were set before. It has nothing to do with this agreement. It's just that these rates would apply to this agreement. And with that, I would take your questions, and we have also our legal expert to be able to answer some of the legal questions as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, question. This fee will not be part of the fee study. This is set. It's not going to change in the not-so-distant future?
The fees, or?
The fee schedule that you were talking about?
Yes, again, it's a pass-through, and the fees are based upon what it takes staff to review and work with the customer to build their system and whatever charges there are. For example, if we have to upgrade our feeder to be able to allow them to interconnect to us, this will be charged to them, but there's also a fee associated with our staff time.
Right.
Councilmember Devine, to answer your question, yes, it is subject to adjustment as we conduct our fee studies once every few years.
Oh, okay.
It
right.
may or
And-
may not be adjusted.
Okay. And my other question is, we've been talking tonight about sources of revenue. Is this going to be a source of revenue?
It's mostly a pass-through.
Pass-through.
And again, Councilmember Devine, there's so few of these very large establishments or companies that will be using this. It'll be minimal.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Okay,
Can I ask a
Councilwoman
question?
Gasaki.
So in the event that a ratepayer uses energy from the city utility, is the cost higher than what other ratepayers would be paying at that moment in time?
I'm sorry, a customer with?
Customer. If a customer ends up using, because their system's down, so you said we would be providing them energy, would the rate be different
so
than
we
what
have
everyone else would be paying?
Yeah, so we have set rates. We'll ask maybe Aneta, do you have the rates that we would charge them? Maybe we can describe.
Mayor, council members, Neda Battalion, acting public benefit marketing manager. Now, the rate that these customers would be paying when their system is down is actually discounted. It is lower because they will be putting all of their load on our grid for that short period of time. They're not paying the standard rate that they're paying for their supplemental service.
Okay.
So it will be lower.
And when there's an outage, the city has a power outage, how does that impact homes that have their own solar and battery systems?
Well, individual homes that have solar and battery will rely on their battery system to back them up as long as their battery was charged, and they will use that as a backup.
Okay. Because not too long ago, there was some representatives from Tesla that had come to the city, and they were inquiring about our processes in terms of adding Tesla backup switches to the meters. Are you familiar with that?
I am. And those switches are designed so that the batteries and the solar system that's residing at the facility or the home can continue to do that while there's an outage at our at the feeder level. If a resident doesn't have a battery, then their solar would not be able to be used at their homes during an outage, because we fear that there's backfeeding of that solar back onto the grid, so that if my linemen need to go out there and do maintenance, they have to assume that the line is de-energized, and that prevents the backfeeding.
But how difficult are we allowing the installation of these backup switches that would allow the home to remain functioning when the rest of the grid is offline?
They do have that. We're not allowing the Tesla switches at this time, but we do have the mechanism that battery storage attached to solar on homes will be able to store and supply the homeowner.
Okay, I have some other questions that I can ask offline.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
I have any questions.
Councilmember Najarian? Councilmember Najarian? Did we lose him? Okay, well, let me ask my questions, and then if he comes back on and has any. Okay, so want to go back to the beginning. Could you put up your, let's see, go back, start with your first slide. I forget which one I want to have up there.
This one?
Okay, so you started off saying in the upper left, non-NEM large customers, you mentioned some of these customer types. I want to be really crystal clear on what this new arrangement is going to be used for and what it's not going to be used for. You also said it doesn't impact existing NEM customers, but it's not just existing NEM customers. It's what makes a customer a NEM customer. And for those that don't know, it's net energy metering, which maybe you want to explain. But what is that dividing line between a NEM customer and a non-NEM customer? Because it's not just the type of customer, it's more complicated than that, correct?
Yes, but so NEM customers are the ones that use renewable resources, and most common is solar. They may pair that up with batteries, which is fine. And because it is renewable, the energy in excess of what they use, we then give them credit, or at the end of the year, they can collect a cash equivalent at a different rate.
Right, okay.
So the key is renewable for NEM.
Okay, but there's some other, maybe you can just explain, because there's some other triggers. Like I know we're saying now up to 10 kilowatts for, a small system, up to 10 kilowatts. We're not asking any questions about their historic usage.
That's right.
If I put on a system that's more than 10 kilowatts, but it's no more than 110% of my usage, that's still NEM.
That's right.
Unless I put on a system that's more than 1 megawatt, and now I'm in a new bucket.
That's
so
right.
I just want that to be really clear
Okay.
to everybody that's
Yes.
listening.
So when we say non-NEM large customers, immediately the biggest ones here would be that they're over 1 megawatt of generation. Therefore, they can't go on our NEM program. This provides them a mechanism to come to the Glendale Water and Power and come up with a method of connecting. It may become a purchase power agreement, but this gives us now the mechanism to do that. Before this, each individual one, we would have to make a separate contract for each. This gives us now the uniform mechanism through this agreement to allow people to interconnect. We send these out to the customers. They know what the requirements are. And it gives the ground rules. You have to have insurance. You have to make sure the interconnection operates within our parameters. If the grid goes down, we separate or we provide power to them. What are the known, how much do we charge for them for these services? in case of emergencies, we have access to their facility. We can work with them. So this sets all the ground rules in place to allow these large customers that before would have to have a one-off contract.
Okay. And just to be clear, for instance, Glendale College is an educational institution, but they're putting in a system that's less than 1 megawatt right now. They're putting in like a 0.75 megawatt or give or take solar system. That would still be under NEM.
Yes.
Just because they're an educational institution doesn't mean it's non-NEM.
No, that's right. That's right. As long as they're below 1 megawatt, then they have a much larger load. Their entire load is, I believe, 2.2 megawatts.
Right.
So that system that you described, a 700 kilowatt system, would not have any problem to qualify for NEM. So it would be to their advantage to go on the NEM program,
on
because
NEM,
then they
okay.
would get credit for
Okay.
the excess energy if they were to generate it.
Okay, and for 99, maybe 99.9% of customers in Glendale, households, small commercial buildings, small multifamily, even probably large multifamily buildings, none of those, all of those will still be NEM pretty much.
Yes,
I mean,
yes, according to our parameters that we
Okay.
currently have.
so it doesn't affect anybody. I just want people to be on it, because I was confused, and I got worried when I thought it's like, oh my God, now everybody that wants to put on a battery is going to have to spend $1,700 just for a fee study. So no, that's not the way it is.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
why we
wanted-
said non-NEM large customers.
Okay, I wanted that to be clear. And then, I guess the other thing I wanted to know is that 1,777 fee for, I know that's just for the initial review,
Yes.
right? So how does it, what does LA charge? What does SMUD charge? Well,
I think our, did you guys? Yeah, we had some numbers.
Intended to print it out and I forgot. I was looking at SMUD yesterday and it was, they actually charge for NEM applications as well. The smallest NEM application has a fee. I think for a system of 500 kilowatts or more, it was $3,000 or $4,000 application fee.
In LA?
SMUD.
No, I know. Do you know LA?
Oh, I don't know. I don't.
Okay.
And normally, they do have, having worked there, I don't remember the
That's
cost,
right, you
but
came from LA.
there is a pass-through cost. It is not free on some of these studies, especially if they become larger. There's a substantial amount, because staff has to look for the interconnection, just as we do. How do we interconnect systems?
Okay. So I think that's all clear now. There are a few things that I just kind of want to put on the table. I know they're kind of ancillary to this, but I would like us to work on. None of them are going to be new because we've been talking about them, but I would like us to really establish what LA calls a feed-in tariff program. We may call it a purchase power agreement program, but where we set out a certain number of megawatts, a certain price we're willing to pay for it, to really encourage developers to find rooftops that they can lease and put systems on and sell that power to us. And I like the way, and LA's been doing it now for probably like, I don't know, 8 to 10 years. I mean, LA's been doing it for a long time. But I like the way they did it, where they came out with a very, very attractive rate initially for the first tranche to try to bring in people quickly. Everybody's racing to get into that first tranche. Then once that first tranche is filled, it steps down because we can't afford for everybody to get that great deal. And these are fixed for 20 years. So I really, I've been asking for this. I really hope that now that you have this, we can very quickly, you can bring that back to us to launch a program. That's one thing. And the other thing is, I'd really like us to look again at that 110% requirement, because I know now we're saying, below 10 kilowatts, it's okay. But above 10 kilowatts, we're not going to approve it if you're more than 110%. But for a lot of people, And there are not a lot of systems, I know, above that amount, but for those people that, want to put in more, we should want that. And I think we could just look at what do we pay them for any excess that they deliver to us? And if we, need to pay a lower rate, whatever, but I think we should have a mechanism so that we can allow people to do that, because it's in our interest,
That's right.
if we price it right.
Yeah. One of the mechanisms we have is if you have an EV, we actually allow you to have about 3.4 kilowatts more. So,
But you have to have the EV. If you're going to get the EV, right? That's the problem. People want to put it on and they say, well, I'm building an ADU. I'm getting an EV. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And it's like, well, no, you have to have done those first. So we should be more flexible. So anyway, that's what I...
Good point.
And then the third thing to look at is, there's this whole charge that we're going to be placing for these customers, these large customers, if the feeder needs to be upgraded, right? So they're putting on a big system and we tell them the feeder is, it can't handle it. You need to upgrade. It's going to cost, $20,000 or $50,000. It could be expensive, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That first customer that does that is paying all the cost, right? And then other customers that come in behind them are getting a free ride because that upgrade already happened. Can we figure out, I know this is a common problem, can we try to figure out a mechanism where there's some fairness there?
There was, I remember in LA, there was a mechanism that there was a time period where if somebody came within a certain time period, you would get reimbursed for the other share because we would then divvy it up. So there were different methods of doing that, but we'll come back.
So if my colleagues are not opposed, I would like staff to kind of move on to that next set of issues. It's kind of all tied together with a lot of this. Mr.
Would that require a separate item?
Mr. Young.
We're looking at the tranches, negotiating a discount to settle for somebody who wants to overproduce, and how do we create fairness for distribution upgrades throughout the whole system, so that the first person doesn't not have to pay and the 10th person has to pay for everything.
Yeah, whoever triggers the upgrade.
Right, it goes that way, because sometimes, the first 9 people, it
okay.
works, and then that 10th person comes along and it doesn't make sense. Okay.
The Mayor, Councilmember Najarian is back on.
Okay. Councilmember Najarian, did you have any comments, questions?
No, I have no comments.
Okay.
Mayor,
Please.
I'd like to ask a question that I asked during the staff briefing as well. Is there a reason why, how long have we been working on this, or how long have we known that this was coming to us? I'm assuming it wasn't a report that was written in a matter of 2 weeks, right? This was something that we've had in the cooker, so to speak?
Well, this has been a year. So remember, before this, they were one-offs. Contracts were done for individuals.
But the idea of having things streamlined and uniformed has been something that we've been considering as an agency, as a utility?
Yes, for example, we have the NEM program that's been there too.
Sure. My question is why this didn't go to the Water and Power Commission, the GWP Commission, and have the commissioners vet this before it came to us? And what is the purpose of having a GWP commission if we're not going to have them hear items like this?
Councilmember, I'm Lonnie Eldridge. I'm a special principal assistant city attorney helping out the Office on Utility Matters. Since that question was raised, we did look at the jurisdiction of GWP, and it is a discretionary, not mandatory to take any particular item except for investigations and upgrades to the finances and the power plants. It's a very, it's not a universal jurisdiction at the GWP Commission. However, it is discretionary. So some items you could choose to take it directly to the council, and some you could take to the commission. In this case, I think to the extent there was determination of that, and I'm not going to say that, since I came on, there was a lot of deliberation on this, but this, even though the staff report has a lot of items it discusses, the only thing the council's being asked to approve is a form interconnection agreement, which just has some bare terms in it. So, it's not mandatory that it goes to the commission. However, any item of importance to the GWP could go. So that's the only answer that we have, is that it's not necessary to go, but it could have gone to the commission
Okay, because I've also noticed that the December meeting was canceled, and I don't know if there was a specific reason, but it would be, I think, useful to have our boards and commissions, which we appoint as policy area experts, more so than us. I'll be the first to admit it, that, we appoint people that we hope understand these issues and can do deeper dives into it, can take the time to vet it, to then bring it to us with their recommendation, would have that opportunity, whether it's within their jurisdiction or not. And if that's the case, then perhaps we ought to look at what is within their jurisdiction and revise it.
That could definitely be changed by the council. It's by ordinance. So you could take that up and change that.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I can move the item.
Okay, so we have a motion. Any seconds?
Second.
Second. A roll call, please.
Council members Asadrian,
Yes.
Divine,
Yes.
Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Mayor Brotman.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And next item?
Next item is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report. We have one speaker card for this item.
One item?
It's okay.
Okay, Peter Hebert. Ooh, Bill. Yes. Been seeing a lot of you lately.
Mayor Brotman, I apologize, but you did not close the hearing.
Ah, so what happens now?
Just close the hearing.
Okay, I close the hearing at 8:28.
Good evening, council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I came last week and I was a little late to give the comments. I did serve on the STAG committee with GWP, and I applaud the council's decision last week to go with the STAG 1 option over the GWP 1, the California state law. Particularly like your speech at the end. These are extraordinary times, and it takes some extraordinary measures, right? So we need to do all that we can. I do believe that GWP is trying to do everything that they can. Fact of the matter is that the technologies that they need simply don't exist today. And we all hope, of course, that they will get to the point where they can be utilized in the next 10 years. But it is risky. But as a city of Glendale, we have a very aggressive low carbon policy for our utility. I don't have the statistics for Glendale, but for the state of California, the emissions from electricity generation are less than 30% of the emissions overall. Transportation is the #1 source of emissions, and then buildings, and then electricity generation. We do have one of the more aggressive electricity generation carbon emission goals that I'm aware of in the world. There might be a few places that are 2030, but within the United States, we are certainly at the very aggressive end of those emission targets. I do not see, and I think that's a noble objective for Glendale, and I commend you all for that. I do not see a similar aggressiveness in reducing the emissions in other parts for Glendale. I've spoken here before about the bike master plan. We know that a grade-separated plan was developed a decade ago, and we're told, which is the Verdugo Wash, and we're told we're still at least a decade from that. Paris is putting in 1 mile of protected bike lane every week for the next 2 years, more than a mile. City of Hoboken, New Jersey, hasn't had a traffic fatality death in 6 years. So while we are very aggressive on our carbon emissions goals for the utility, Glendale is not aggressive at all in its carbon emissions targets for the other parts of the city. We still allow houses to be built connected to the gas, natural gas. We don't require solar. I'm not aware of any incentives for passive house or for net solar designs. We certainly don't make things easy. If there is an aesthetic disagreement, you do not get your passive solar house within the city of Glendale. I went through this myself, remodeling. It took 6 months to get a roof design that was suitable to put solar on. Cost us a lot of money to do that. So again, I commend us for the spirit, and we have a very aggressive goal for the utility, but I think Glendale does not have equally aggressive goals when it comes to buildings, when it comes to transportation, when it comes to Vision Zero, or other aspects that affect energy. I did go to the bike meeting at Spar Heights, saw the sign there for Vision Zero. And our first sentence on the billboard for Vision Zero was that we will put in traffic calming for all high accident thoroughfares. Or, I don't know about you, but my definition of zero also includes low accident and medium accident, not just high accident. Traffic calming only in high accident thoroughfares. So zero has to include medium accidents and low accidents as well. So just the first statement of Vision Zero is a non-starter. All right. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
What was the city in
Yes.
New Jersey that you said that had zero?
Hoboken.
Hoboken. All right, got it. Thank you.
I mean, there are a number of other examples out there making tremendous strides. And I think for the noble and the great goal that we have for our utility, we could be making equally aggressive strides in other aspects of the city.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. You have another card? And three callers. What? I can't read this. Oh, JT. Oh, you're JT. Okay, let's get JT up here.
No, he's going to decide.
What's that?
I mean, it's up to you, but he doesn't get to decide that.
No, all right, whatever. Okay, get the callers.
We have our first caller, whose name is Woodheld. They did not provide their name, so go ahead and speak. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, council members, and thank you very much for taking my call. I am a resident of Montecito Park, and the purpose of my call tonight is to voice some concern over a posted sign I saw for a banquet hall at 3313 North Verdugo under the name of Hill Banquet Hall. The posted sign said that they have applied to get an administrative use permit to serve and sell alcohol at the establishment. And I'm very concerned about this, and I think my concern is also shared by many of my neighbors in this area. As many of you may be familiar, Montecito Park and the Spar Heights is a very quiet neighborhood. And we've had trouble with this establishment in the past. I want to kind of give you a little bit of a background within the time that I'm given, so you kind of understand where the concern is coming from. This banquet hall was pretty much built almost to the end, to completion, without any permits. And the city had to step in and stop their remodeling until they pulled permits, which they did. There was supposed to be a restaurant, but upon, I guess, getting whatever permit they got, which I believe was a restaurant, operating a restaurant permit, they started only doing weekend events as a banquet hall, which caused a lot of noise, nuisance, traffic, cars being parked on the street. They had entertainment, they had music that would echo around the neighborhood on weekend nights. And if you're familiar with this area, even after 8:30, it's a very quiet neighborhood. And you can only imagine how badly the noise from the music that was basically played inside was echoing throughout the neighborhood. The Glendale PD had to be called and shut this operation down numerous times because of that same reason. There were cars revving up and down the street. They had valet service, which they were not permitted to have valet service. They had dancing and entertainment inside, a dance floor, which they were not permitted to have. And this is the information that I've gathered from the city when we have called. And now seeing that they have applied to get a license to serve and sell alcohol is extremely concerning. I think this is only going to add to the trouble that we've had with them. The establishment is a stone's throw from Fremont Elementary School. I think they're less than about a quarter of a mile away. I mean, you can literally stand outside of their back door and see the schoolyard. So there's a lot of problems that will come if city considers granting them this license to sell and serve alcohol, because they've never been opened as a restaurant for the past 2 or 3 years. They don't have a menu. So it's very difficult for me to believe that this place is a restaurant. It's not a restaurant. It's a banquet hall. They intended to be a banquet hall, and they're going to be a banquet hall, and I believe they have found loopholes to get through the system. And at this point, I think city needs to take a very deep and serious look at this request to get an alcohol permit. That's what I wanted to voice, and I think there's a neighborhood concern that we'll probably be hearing more. Those are the comments that I wanted to make.
Thank you. I have a
Thank
question.
you.
Oh, wait.
Mr. Galani, is that the banquet hall that's in the strip mall up there? Is that the one he's talking about?
Councilmember Devine, that establishment is a restaurant. They have held private parties. We have sent code enforcement in the past, but they have applied for this permit. Anyone can apply for any permit. It hasn't been granted, right? So it's an application process.
Okay, thank
Okay, our next caller is Nicholas Franklin. Nicholas, you're on air. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, I would like to speak about in-home supportive services, and I would like, if possible, for Artie Kasakian to go with me to speak to Laura Friedman, because they only get paid $14 an hour, $14 an hour for their personal work that they do for people with disabilities. And the reason that I would like for Artie to go with me is because he could help me to explain to the assembly person that they need to at least be paid $22 an hour for their services, because $14 an hour is nothing. And then also the next one is regarding access services. I believe that if you have a permanent disability, as I do, I have cerebral palsy and I'm confined to a wheelchair, with a doctor's notification, you should not have to be renewed every few years to use access service if you have a permanent disability. So that's a concern of mine. Also, it would be really helpful if we could change the lighting system for crossing the street, where it says at the Americana, especially for blind people, that the walk sign is on so they'll know it's okay to safely cross the street. So if Artie would be able to help me to meet with Laura Friedman on the in-home supportive services issue, that would really be appreciated, because they, at this time, as I said, only get paid $14 an hour, and I believe that they should at least get paid $22 an hour. And I will wait to hear from Artie at his convenience.
Thank you, Nick.
you.
We'll be in touch. I'll reach out to you. Thanks for calling.
Bless you for your kind attention. and keep up the wonderful work for our wonderful city. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller, final caller, is Fernando Roldan. Fernando, you're on air. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just one correction for the gentleman that spoke. The hourly rate right now is $17.50. They did raise it up in the beginning of the year, but we're still working on raising the salary. Anyway, the point is, to what the gentleman said, I'd like to see a future endeavor with the city to make sure that people with disabilities, especially to create some kind of committee. I know I mentioned it before a couple of months ago, and I'm going to mention it again. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, please create some kind of disability advisory council. I mean, just made up of volunteers, so at least some of us who have disabilities can speak with our city council and our mayor about areas of the ADA. I mean, like what the gentleman said, it's true. We do need more special lights for people with disabilities. The cars are really going way too fast here, and especially in Glen Oaks and San Fernando, they're just going way too fast, and it really is a danger for some of us who are in wheelchairs, canes, walkers, whatever the case. I'd like to see more of that. Again, please, I do ask for the next upcoming year to create a disability advisory committee made up of volunteers with people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Galanian, on that, do I have to wait until new business to ask that it be agendized for us to create?
Yes,
to look
Council.
at-
Yeah, Councilman Sargent. They will have to go through the process of adding the new
No,
business.
no, as in, can I make it now and request it now, or do I have to wait until new business on the agenda?
I think you
Yeah,
can
you can
request
request it now, and then it will come
So
on
I'd
the
like to
next
request
meeting's
that at the
agenda.
next meeting, we discuss People with Disabilities Advisory Committee of some sort.
Our next speaker is JT Park.
What up, council? I'm a chill guy, and I was hoping to have a nice holiday, getting drunk and high, but mostly hanging out with my girlfriend and kids. But I'm having trouble relaxing right now, because the world is so heavy, specifically the Israel-Palestine conflict. That's why I wanted to get it sorted and ask you guys, who in this conflict is the good guys, and who in this conflict is the bad guys? I really want to get it right, and I don't know who to trust, so I'm asking you, the government, to help me get it settled. And Chad would also like to know.
Is that it?
Anything more?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. That was a little of a letdown. I mean, we expect more from you two, but anyway. What is next?
Adjournment.
So moved. Merry Christmas. Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas.
Adjourned
Happy
at
holidays.
8:45 p.m.